Good morning, everybody. My name's James, and for the benefit of those listening on the audio, you're listening to my Ask James live stream, where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. It's just gone 9:30 a.m. in the UK, and I'll be answering questions over the next hour on anything that the YouTube community asked me. Let's get straight into the questions following that big breaking news this morning of Patrick Vieira's dismissal as Crystal Palace manager. FPL PTSD says, "Morning James, loving your work as ever. I'm down to a choice between Almiron, Gibbs White and Buendia for buying in this week. Head says Miggy, heart says Buendia, troublemaker in me says Gibbs White. What do you reckon?" Well, the first thing to say is, are you a manager who plays with your head, your heart, or you're a troublemaker? And that's probably where your answer lies. I like Gibbs White's double in 29, but I think if Johnson's absent, and he's likely to be absent this week, that doesn't help. But it's not a serious issue. He's in the Wales squad, even if he doesn't make tonight. I presume if you go Gibbs White, you'll have that going up against at least Kieran Trippier this week as well. So that's a little bit conflicting. Mind you, if you go with the others, you've probably got them conflicting issues with you in game week 29, perhaps. Maybe not so much with Miguel Almiron, but I guess you may want to be looking for something Chelsea defensive, which Buendia would certainly conflict against in game week 29. You may even have Danny Ward as part of a bench boost, though I know Sam Martin, who's quite in the know with Leicester, has tweeted this morning saying that Daniel Weaverson may start tomorrow. I don't know if that's ITK or not, but he's a good source of information for Leicester Sam. He's a good lad. That's something to note for Danny Ward owners who might be looking to bench boost in 29. Could be some upsetting news tomorrow. That's right off topic. To be totally honest, I think if it was me right now, because of the prospect of a game week 31 double for Newcastle, that would give Miguel Almiron the nod for me. Nigel Sam says, "Morning James, which striker would you go for from Solanke or Iheanacho for next week? Need a striker for the bench in 29 to bench boost and carry through, so preferably cheap. If you're buying now for the bench boost, I wouldn't buy Iheanacho. That said, use the information that you can get this week if you don't need to buy this week. So I think Iheanacho's performance tomorrow might be quite important. That said, when I got Iheanacho, and I do still I got him in ahead of the Southampton fixture, right? So it felt like very good timing. Again, are you conflicted this weekend if you have to go now for Iheanacho? Because you may have a Raya or a Henry or a Pinnock or a Me, for example. That would be conflicting. I've got 2 Brentford and 2 Leicester going into tomorrow. It is what it is. I haven't really got much of a choice about that, to be honest. So, preference probably with Solanke. Highly likely to start the 2 in the double. They do have 2 home fixtures. That's where the preference would be at this stage. That said, I wouldn't rule Brennan Johnson out of that either, actually. Especially if he plays tonight, then obviously you know he's fit. Or if he plays for Wales during the break, then you know he's fit. So, arguably Brennan Johnson might even be the better choice of the 3, but definitely not for this week if you need to buy now. I think it would be Solanke from your 2, Nigel. Sage says, "Hey James, thanks for the content. Have 10 players already. Would you do Henry / Stupinan for Chilwell for a free transfer that wouldn't allow Odegaard to Bruno in 29 due to funds?" Ooh, that's a little bit conflicting. What's your alternative then to getting Bruno Fernandes in 29? Perhaps the solution for you might be Wesley Fofana, who's a doubt, but we should get some information hopefully today from Graham Potter on Chelsea team news. So, I think he's been training, is my understanding, this week. So, Fofana might seal the deal for you, particularly if you're looking towards a bench boost in 29. I've gone dunk to Chilwell. I said that on Monday's podcast. I made that move on Sunday night before Chilwell's price rise. So, the advice for me would be, go and get Chilwell. But I've certainly got the money in the bank to go even from Saka to Salah, for example, in 29, should I deem I want to. And it also would still allow me the possibility to get Haaland back in 30 as I've got over 10 million in the bank. So, might be Fofana is the right solution for you. I don't think I'd go Henry to Chilwell necessarily this week. Is Stupinan for Chilwell? Probably yes. But consider Fofana. Owen Wilson says, "Can you try and predict Arsenal's 11 for Sunday? Have Zinchenko and Martinelli and not sure what to do with them now." Oh. Yeah, that's tough. That's a kind of... I think last night changed a lot of the developments for thinking for Arsenal players this week. So Martinelli obviously played 120 minutes. Though I suspect him missing the penalty might help his prospects in terms of starting again, where Arteta says, look, get it out your head, play football again. But I think with Jesus back fit now, Trossard obviously available as well, we'd have to doubt a start for Martinelli this week. And obviously Arsenal do have the not often seen Kieran Tierney, who you would think really in a fixture at home to Palace could certainly stand in and do a job for Arsenal on Sunday. So I'm predicting the team. Tomiyasu went off with a serious injury, which might rule him out for the rest of the season. Saliba needs to be assessed. Apparently he said he was in pain, and it might be there's no issue and he could even play Sunday. But I think with the information we got now, we'd have to say he's a serious doubt as well. So to predict the Arsenal team Sunday as it stands now, tough. Ramsdale, White, Holding, Gabriel, Tierney, Partey, probably Xhaka, could be Vieira, Odegaard definitely, Saka almost definitely, probably Jesus and Trossard. I know this is not what you wanted to hear, but that's probably where I'd lean at the moment. I think if your intention was to sell those players in 29, I would consider doing it now. The problem particularly for replacing Martinelli is the options in the midfield area for this particular week aren't outstanding. If you can go up to James Maddison, that's probably the one. But lower down, you're going back to sort of the options that PTSD was mentioning, your Buendias, Almirons and stuff like that. If you could go Martinelli to Maddison, I'd consider that. Zinchenko to Chilwell, I would really strongly consider doing if that's unavailable for you, Owen. So it's tough break, because moving those two Arsenal players from -4 doesn't feel right. Really doesn't. Certainly with Martinelli, he'll get on the pitch, I would say. And look, can he scored at Villa as a substitute, for example. So that one's a more difficult move. Zinchenko, as I said, if you were looking to move in 29, I'd probably be looking to do that, I think. Neil Thompson says, morning, do you think Palace sacking Vieira is a good move? His run of results has been poor, but playing tough fixtures. I must say the news surprised me this morning. I don't think we should be shocked. I think for a club like Palace, the determination to maintain their status as a Premier League football club is obviously particularly important. But the run of fixtures is rough as, right? They've not played a single team below them in the league in 2023. Not one. And their last win was against Bournemouth just before New Year. I think the only side, obviously, in the bottom half they played, arguably their easiest fixture they've had in 2023 was the 1-0 defeat at Villa in terms of league positioning. So they've had a really tough run. There's some draws in there against some decent sides. Newcastle, Man United, Liverpool, Brighton. They drew with all of them, right? Tough run of fixture. I felt like they've been maintaining themselves. I think what's really obviously hampered him is the performances more than the results over the last 4. So they started really well at Brighton on Wednesday night, but didn't follow that up and didn't really threaten once Brighton went ahead. It's well documented in the 3 games before that. They didn't have a shot on target. So I think it's actually the performances as much as the results, because expectation on what they'd have got over this period wouldn't have been high. It's the results that's what's done for him. And I think fine margins, like if they'd have held on to that victory at Brentford rather than concede a stoppage time goal, does that change the narrative? I've been consistent in my opinion that with the home games they've got left, they've got Leicester, Everton, West Ham, Bournemouth, Forest. You could barely ask for 5 better home games than what they've got left. That they'll be absolutely fine, Palace. And I think it's a tough break, actually. But I think it's probably reflective on performances. I've not seen many Palace fans calling for him to go. If there was any, it's a minority. So I'm surprised that they let it go this far and have decided to change now ahead of the weekend. I don't know what the benefit of sacking him now ahead of Sunday is, when actually they proved difficult opposition to beat for a lot of these teams. Look at City, right? City beat them with a penalty last week. So does that make them more difficult to beat at Arsenal at the weekend? They'd take a draw now, wouldn't they? So unless the players have gone to Steve Parish and said, you've got to get rid of him, I think the timing of the announcement's pretty strange, to be honest. Where do they go from here? I think for Palace, like, what do they want to be? It's a question often posed to Mig on COTCs. Like, what do Palace want to be? Is the ambition really to be a top 10 team? Is that even realistic? Palace are 12th. Isn't that roughly where we expect Palace to be? It feels a little harsh for me with what's to come. I really don't think they'd have gone down under Patrick Vieira, and I don't think they'll go down now. And I think we've been saying, look, from kind of after 29, keep an eye on their assets like Zaha and some of the defensive players, because that run of fixtures is so good. So it's polar opposite now. They've gone from playing no one below them in the table to what they've got left. Teams they've got left after Arsenal that are above them in the league. 2. Tottenham away in game week 35, Fulham away in game week 37. Like, what a run of fixtures they've got. So, yeah, bit harsh. But I think it's probably as much as about the lack of attacking intent in the last few games rather than the actual results themselves. I think it's a bit harsh, personally. Owen Wilson says, pulling down the chat, also, who do you think Palace should get now? The opinions seem pretty limited, or the options rather seem pretty limited. Yeah, it kind of goes back to what I said. What do Palace want to be? Like, I know Benitez has been linked a lot with West Ham, so maybe his name might come up. Does he keep them up? Yeah, sure. Does the football get better? No. What do Palace want to be as an identity? Like, I really think they'll be all right. Of all the teams down there at the moment, even if Vieira had stayed, as I said, nah, absolutely fine. That fixture run is too good. And yes, the results have obviously been terrible, but what would we have expected from Palace over this run? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what route they take with this. Who should they go for? I think, because I think they'll be all right, a young up-and-coming coach, personally. Someone like Patrick Vieira. I'm totally honest. Alistair Coper says, morning, mate. My plan was to do Zinchenko to Chilwell in 29. However, I'm a little worried about Zinchenko as he played 120 minutes. Reports of a hammy issue too. Who do you reckon scores most in 28? All I'd say with a hammy issue was, and I didn't watch the game last night, was the reports I heard was that he was stretching out his hamstring. Now, if he's playing 120 minutes, we shouldn't probably be that surprised about that. However, obviously, that particular muscle is one you don't want to take risks with, because you know if it goes, this minimum a month, basically. I'd move that now, I think, would be my take, similar to what I said to the previous question, Alistair. Ian says, evening from Melbourne, Australia. Good evening, Ian. Says, what was your first away game without your dad? And is there a lower league club you'd like to see make it to the Prem that you missed going to previously? I'll answer the second bit first. I would have said the 2 Sheffield clubs. Obviously, recently went to Bramble Lane and wished that I hadn't. Sheffield Wednesday is the one I've said a number of times. That's the biggest stadium in the UK that I haven't been to. Obviously, we haven't played Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough since 99, I think, 99 or 2000. So I'd love to see them come up. I do note the report that was released yesterday that said the ground capacity on the Leppings Lane then is going to be reduced after there was obviously incidents of overcrowding when Newcastle played there in the FA Cup in January. It's unbelievable that there were issues in that stand after obviously what's happened in that stadium previously. That needs pulling down by the sounds of it. It sounds like the way it's built, there's only kind of one entrance into the lower tier. It's astonishing. Absolutely astonishing that that's the case. I never knew that until Newcastle played there. Bristol City, maybe another one. I realise I just upset one of our most loyal patrons, Dan. But yeah, Bristol City have obviously redeveloped their stadium. I've never been to Bristol, so maybe Bristol City is another one to kind of put in that list now. We've never played them, home or away, since I've been watching Tottenham. First game without my dad. That's a tough one. There's a number of away games I've been to without my dad. I want to say Wigan in 2005. Edgar Davids scored his only goal for us. We won 2-1. I went up there with a mate of mine, Ian, who had a lot of friends in Chester. We stayed in Chester that night. And I basically told my dad, you can come, but you've got to come on the piss in Chester. And he wasn't up for that. So I think that was probably the first one. There's been a number since when I've gone with a few other people to a few away games. Normally shit ones that he bottles like Burnley and Hull and stuff like that, right? Wigan. It's got to be Wigan, I think, 2000. Must be that, I should imagine. But he's normally with me. He'll be with me tomorrow for Southampton. We should be able to get there. I don't know if we're going to be able to get home. I'm fairly certain there's going to be some fun stories on this on Tottenham on Patreon this coming Wednesday. Rob Picks is, hi mate. Looking at Chilwell and Isak in for Duncan Haaland this week, which leaves me 13 double game week players plus Zinchenko and Saka for 29. Thoughts on Benrahma and Bowen for 29, and also Shaw versus Brighton defender for 29. Preference would strongly be for Benrahma at the moment. I know Bowen obviously scored twice last night. I'm fairly sure that's the answer Suj would give, would be Benrahma. Also a lot cheaper. I think there's a psychological aspect to that maybe, Rob, where in a weird way, ask yourself if Benrahma was the same price as Bowen, who would you buy? I think the psychological one, I can afford Bowen. Actually, Benrahma's the one, if we look at some of the shot data recently, the fact he's on penalties now, probably gets the edge a little bit, possibly a little bit more chance of not playing, whereas Bowen almost definitely will play. But it would be Benrahma for me. He's not out of my consideration for 29. My concern would be when I use him going forward and if I'd be able to move it. I think that's another reason not to go for Bowen. If you're not free hitting 32, they're both a little bit more attractive. Shaw versus Brighton. Give myself some thinking space on that, I think, because it's probably the decision that I've got to make, Rob, and I've not made it yet. So it'd probably be Shaw or Dunk / Estupiñán back in for me over Gabriel in 29, I should imagine. That decision is not made yet. I'm not sure. Really not sure on that, Rob, because there's pros to either way of that, I think. United have really good fixtures in 30, which is worth considering. So they've got Everton at home 30, Forest away 31, then blank probably if they beat Fulham in the Cup this weekend in 32. That may affect your strategy as well. But then for the Brighton asset, you've got difficult fixtures, but 31 possibly turns into a double. Also extremely likely blank 32. So as I'll be free hitting in 32, almost definitely. It's obviously not a problem for me. So those are top of the shop of the agenda for me. Another name I started thinking about, Rob, actually, it might be a surprise, but it's another West Ham player, Kurt Zuma, who's obviously back fit. It's a decent double, Southampton, Newcastle at home, 29. And there might be one I just bench it going forward, possibly. And they do have another double further down the line. Admittedly, that double will obviously feature Manchester City away. It would probably be for West Ham. Palace away and Manchester City away as the probable double in 34, most likely. But yeah, that's another name. So I'm going to have a look around at a few different options. There's one to add to your list. But I think, yeah, it would probably be Shaw or back to Dunk or Estupiñán. Joshim Ravu says, are you going to watch your captain play live at St Mary's Stadium? So you have a great day Saturday. Listen, I'll have a great day on Saturday if Harry Kane does well, whether he's captain or not. He won't be captain for me, that's a certainty, because I don't own him. I'll be going Saka, captaincy. It's probably the ones that come out yesterday go, yeah, he starts for Arsenal Sunday. And I think we can overread into, oh, no manager bounce for Palace, or, oh my God, Arsenal fatigued from last night. Psychological damage to Arsenal from last night. Like, we can overplay these things. We don't actually know what the outcome of that is. And the two best fixtures this week really are for Arsenal and Chelsea. Ben Chilwell's probably going to be my vice. But I think I'm still going to go with Saka. I think that's probably the right play for me. He will be top of the shop in terms of captaincy tips on the deadline stream later. And Harry Kane will likely be in second. On Monday's podcast, I said I'd go Martinelli as my choice for captain this week if I was free hitting. I don't own him. That would be a different opinion now because of the amount of minutes played last night and obviously the severe risk that he may not start. So I think Saka will be the call. I think that probably narrows it where majority of Arsenal options will lean to him or maybe Odegaard. But it does look like Kane's going to be the most captained this week. And if you're conscious of that sort of thing, then the advice would be Harry. But I'll repeat what I said on Monday's podcast, that we go third if we win tomorrow, and I just know that this Tottenham team is very capable of blowing themselves up in the face when opportunity strikes in front of them. And I think we should also take very careful consideration from Wednesday and Southampton's defeat to Brentford that Romeo Lavia didn't start, and he will start tomorrow. Fairly certain of that. I think they just made a decision not to start him 3 times inside 7 days, and decided to pick the fixture that they felt they could deal without him best. And from that perspective, probably right. They had about 67% of the ball, Southampton. He'll be back in the team tomorrow, and that's the difference for them. So the probably the sensible advice I can give is, if you're unsure, go Harry, because he'll probably be the most captained. But if it was me, I would almost definitely be going Saka if I was free hitting this week. It's better fixture. They're at home. They're very capable of destroying the opposition, despite what's happened in the last 24 hours. So I think Saka, it'll be Saka for me in any case. Lee Sherwood says, would you go Badiashile for Chilwell for a -4? I've got 11 this week. So I presume you obviously mean Chilwell in for Badiashile. Probably yes. We're unsure what the situation is with Badiashile. I think Potter's probably looking for continuity at the moment, it feels like. And it would probably feel strange that he picked the same back three against Leicester that's beat Dortmund, then to change that for this game against Everton. So I think if we factor continuity in, Badiashile probably doesn't play. Now, -4 for a defender, nah. But the upside of Chilwell versus a player we think, and we can't guarantee that, we think at the moment probably doesn't start tomorrow, and then that going into game week 30 and being one less of a headache, yeah, I'd probably do it. Lee also says, if Madders is out, who's the best non-Arsenal mid to get? Again, options not great. I think just on Maddison, I should add that he wasn't mentioned in Brendan Rodgers' presser yesterday. We're aware that he's obviously been carrying this ongoing issue. He has been photographed in training this week. So I don't think there's going to be any information today that suggests he's unavailable currently as it stands. So I think we'd have to assume that Madders is available. Where would you go if not an Arsenal midfielder? Probably back to the first question. You're looking at people like Almiron and Buendia, I think. If I was free hitting this week, I'd be very tempted to go with Sonny. I know I poo-pooed that a bit on Monday. But it's the fact you can get there and the explosiveness is there. Only on a free hit. I would not buy him. No way. On a free hit, I'd be tempted, particularly on the Southampton team. News today could be quite important. So, Kyle Walker-Peters limped off on Wednesday. It's not a serious issue, but he obviously could be doubtful tomorrow. He's a very good 1v1 defender. Actually, as can be in physical duels, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, who's also missed the last couple because of injury. Again, he's going to be assessed. We thought he'd probably be available for Wednesday, so he's close. If Ruben Sellers comes out today and says they're both unavailable, I presume James Bree would play at right back, came off for Kyle Walker-Peters on Wednesday, and that would be a test for him. First start the guy up against Sonny. And that would really appeal. That's the sort of thing that I think then would, if I was free and go, I've got to get him in. And he will be affordable for most people. So if you're free hitting, Sonny. If you're not, the answer's Maddison. But otherwise, probably what I'd said at the start, maybe Almiron, to be honest. Right, who's next? FPL Planner says, hi James, on a free hit, would you take a punt on Pedro Porro over Reece James besides Chilwell and Trippier? And what would your triple Arsenal be? Many thanks and good luck this game week. Triple Arsenal, I think, would be straightforward actually at this point. Be Gabriel, Odegaard, Saka. That feels Gabriel's got to play, hasn't he? You would think. And at least with Gabriel as a centre back, if he doesn't start, he probably doesn't get on. Then you've got your bench. And by the way, if you're free hitting this week, have a strong bench, right? Don't fear the points on the bench. You may need it as some cover. I think Saka and Odegaard is the safest way to go, isn't it? I'd love to punt Trossard. Probably does start. I think Odegaard will come on like 105 minutes last. He definitely starts, doesn't he? So I think that it would be those two offensively. On Porro, probably not. Probably not. I think Chilwell, James, Trippier / Arsenal defender. I'd be keener to go for than Porro. You'd certainly make a case for Newcastle defence. I would also make a case for the likes of Craig Dawson this week on a free hit. I mean, it's the sort of one you can vision the 15-pointer there, can't you? I imagine Porro will start. There's certainly upside in terms of his offensive output. We obviously saw him assist for Harry last week in a victory over Nottingham Forest. It's not a bad choice. Like, if I was picking a Tottenham defensive player on free hit this week, he'd be the one without question. But I'd probably look elsewhere, personally. FPL Richie says, hi James, what's your view on those using the opportunity to sell a Brighton mid this week in order to buy their preferred one in game week 29? Fine. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Look, it was never part of my strategy when I wildcarded before 26 to be looking at selling a Brighton player now. But then that strategy had me with Sanchez in goal, right? Who I would have been benching this week if you're still in the team. So I had to flip-flop things. And once I'd bought Mitoma in to McAllister, for me to sell one this week, considering Chilwell was the player I wanted the most as well, Lewis Dunk was the right answer to get me up to 11. And I may literally reverse that. It wouldn't be for Chilwell. It'd be what we call in Sky a kind of chain movement. It would be for Gabriel, right? As already said to Rob Pick's question earlier, he'd be right under consideration. The moving of the midfielders to get the one you want, I think they'll probably flip-flop points a lot, right? All three of them, Mitoma, McAllister and March, the 3Ms, why is no one calling them the 3Ms, are all great. And it might even be, for me, we mentioned the likes of Almiron and stuff like that, it might even be that if I move on Saka 29, I've got Mitoma and McAllister. I won't rule out going March, actually. If I go Luke Shaw as my choice defensively, it brings March really under consideration. The plan was Bruno Fernandes for me, but if I've got doubts about his positioning, I might skip past it. Mo Salah's the other one that's kind of really under consideration for me. March should be part of that. I won't think, oh my God, I've got the money in the bank, I have to spend it. I'll pick what I think is the right decision going forward. The problem with that is, do I then want 3 Brighton mids going forward when I know Rashford is definitely going to be in there? And it only leaves me space for one more. And it might be, although it doesn't look attractive now, it might be looking later in the season that the likes of Foden, Grealish really step forward. Probably means I'm sacrificing James Maddison, who could be good going forward as well. Even for 34, right, he's got Everton at home. So covers really nicely if you can't get a complement of doublers. I'll be conscious of that. It probably means I don't go towards March, personally. But I'm not... I think that if you're selling because it's the right thing to do this week and you decide to go for a different one in 29, fine. But I wouldn't do it for the sake of I want to swap around my Brighton players. Let me say that. Chase says, morning James, I'm wildcarding this week and planning to bench boost in 29. The plan was to have Kepa and Ward as the keepers. However, both seem to be at risk for rotation. Which one would you go for? I don't think Kepa's a risk. I know Mendy's back in training. But I don't particularly think that he is a risk, personally. I think, could Potter at some point between now and the end of the season go, I'm going to go and play Mendy? Yeah, possibly. Could he decide, hey, I'm going to give Kepa a break ahead of the Champions League quarterfinal? Maybe. His goalkeeper's a little bit different to outfield players. And again, reflect on what I said a few moments ago about Potter looking for continuity. That also refers to the goalkeeper playing behind a more consistent back three, right? So I don't think there's huge risk there. Based on some rumours this morning, which I mentioned right at the top of the stream, yeah, Danny Ward would be an absolute no-go right now. Players to consider for you. I tell you one I'll throw in there is Bernd Leno. Might sound like a strange one, right? He obviously blanks this week, but it's fine. You've got Kepa. Fulham are likely to have a really difficult double further down the line, which is probably going to be 34. It's probably going to be Man City at home and Liverpool away. But should a clean sheet land in them, you know that's Hull. There'll be save points in there, right? With goalkeepers, it's different. Leno could concede in both of them, still walk out of there with sort of 5-6 points. Not impossible, right? And he's likely to have a double on a different week to Kepa's double. Kepa's double is probably more likely to be at the end. So that would cover you off for almost definitely. Actually, that's not true. Not almost definitely. Let's say highly likely cover you off for the doubles of 34 and 37 for your goalkeeper. I think that's quite interesting. Areola will do the same, but we don't know when Fabianski is going to be back and the potential impact of that. So that's a little bothering, but it's got very good double in 29 with 2 home games against 2 sides who aren't the best defensively. Yes, that includes Newcastle. I think that's an okay fixture for a goalkeeper particularly. So that's another one to throw in there. You've still got your likes of David Raya, who will obviously cover you through fine. Their fixtures are tough. It's not often you pick him over Kepa. So I think you're probably looking to find ways to save a bit of money. I think Steele is too risky. 4-star, I wouldn't go there. That's obviously not going to help you for bench boost 29 either. So, mind you, neither is Leno if you bench boost in 29, of course, because they've only got a single Bournemouth away. So it probably throws that one out. Emi Martinez, you happy to spend the money on it? Might be the one. Or even Areola, I guess, from the double perspective. Yeah, of course, Leno's not going to help you if you bench boost in 29. It does help you for the doubles later on, but not 29, sorry. I'd maybe go Areola then, because it's short term, right? But I don't know when Fabianski's back, to be totally honest. So I think you need to do some digging on that before you make that decision. Any doubt, just go Raya. Martinez, another one for you. Even Neto at Bournemouth, by the way, not bad either, actually. They're double in 29, is okay. He'll definitely play. Ali Bismo says, morning James, is it right to plan owning only one of Haaland or Kane after bench boost 29, given we're likely to want Salah and TAA if Liverpool double in 34? I'm likely to free hit 32 if Man United and Chelsea blank. Cheers, mate. It'd be difficult to fit them both, yeah. One of the reasons I decided not to go Harry Kane on the wild card was knowing that I want to go back to Haaland 30-31 and Harry Kane will arguably block that. Now, I know people have set it up where they've got, say, Kane, Watkins, Tony now, and then you move Tony onto Haaland in 30, for example. Absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with that at all. But yeah, my consciousness, Ali, was exactly that. I want to go towards maybe Bruno Fernandes. I would highly likely want Mo Salah at some stage, possibly even in 29. So it was that consciousness of, well, yeah, I can afford it, but this is possibly going to block this elsewhere. So going forward, beyond, I think, yes, and consider obviously Kane has Newcastle United, Liverpool in a row, 32-34. So be quite straightforward to go without. But then if you're not free hitting in 32, Haaland's unlikely to have a fixture and Kane will. And that it comes back to saying you're going to block yourself a little bit. But yeah, I think generally speaking, it probably will be one of the other, considering we will want to invest more in not just Liverpool assets for 30, but Man United and Manchester City as well. Probably means Harry will be sacrificial for many. Lee Jackson says, can anyone else hear an echo? No, mate. Only you. And if you don't know what Lee's talking about, have a look on my Twitter timeline. And the difficulty we had in setting up Thursday's clash of the correspondence because of Lee. No blame, mate. DC says, good morning, James. Do you think Zinchenko will play, considering the switch to Chilwell? Thank you for the question. I've covered that in detail already. Just in one word answer, doubtful. But I covered that in a bit of detail to an earlier questioner, but thank you for the question. Andre Sosa says, when Christensen is back for Leicester, who would be more nailed in their defence, Ricardo or Castagna? Also, which one is better, Newcastle option, Almiron or Isak? The answer would be Castagna to the first question. However, a reminder that Leicester have not kept a clean sheet since the World Cup. And also the fact that Castagna has been playing on the left in the short term means that his attacking output has lessened. Also, the introduction of Tete has been damaging for him as an FPL prospect as well, because Leicester are playing with a player who, when he plays, didn't play against Chelsea, they changed the system. If they go back to a back four, he's been a little bit more restricted in terms of acting as a backup player for Tete and building attacks, rather than Leicester used to shunt Maddison from right to central and he'd bomb on. They would not be top of my agenda. However, I concede that the fixture this week isn't terrible. The 29 double is good, Palace and Villa. And the 30 fixture is great against Bournemouth. You could bench against Man City 31. Then there's another few good fixtures. And that appeals. And because of their defensive record, most won't go near it. It might be that I myself land in 29. We mentioned Shaw, Dunk, Stupinan, Zuma. That I might land at 29 and go, shit, you know what? Castagna really works for me here for the next two. I could make that decision, yes. But I wouldn't be overly hopeful of the attacking returns from him, is what I would add. if Danny Ward comes out the team, that may make him more attractive to others as well, it's worth saying. So Castagna in answer to your first question. The second question, Isak for me over Almiron. But with the caveat again of saying, I think there are more forward options of interest than midfield options in this particular game week. That then flips on its head in 29, where there are more interesting midfield assets than forward assets. So what's the priority? Is it now? Is it 29? Like this week, there's loads of good alternatives to Isak. You could comfortably go Tony, Watkins, Havertz, Kane, etc. Right? 29, that doesn't feel quite so attractive. You wouldn't go Tony as new, I don't think. If you've got, fine. Unless he gets booked this weekend, of course, which would lead to a 2-game suspension. Watkins still fine. The attractiveness of Kane lessens with one fixture. You've got the likes of Haaland. We've mentioned Dominic Solanke with a decent double, for example. Watkins will still be strong. Perhaps Brennan Johnson comes back into the conversation for 29. Danny Ings, maybe even, with 2 home games. So I feel like there are more alternatives 29 for forwards than there is this week. That's all I'd say. But yeah, Isak of the 2 for me, I think. Nick says, morning, I've seen my team Newcastle win lots of relegation scraps over the years, but I can't remember one this close. Apart from Everton, which others do you think would be in trouble if they go down? I presume that question is laced with financial trouble. Then, I think Southampton wouldn't be in financial trouble, but may find it difficult to come straight back up. I'm not sure how aggressive they'd be in the transfer market. That said, they've got a lot of sellable, good young assets. You know, Lavia would get them a big chunk of money. James Ward-Prowse would get them a big chunk of money. So I guess they could reinvest. So it's just a case of whether they do, because they've been well known over the years not to reinvest that money. It would be in financial trouble. Not many. Well, Forest is the obvious one to say, isn't it? Because of the outlay in terms of new signings. So that would probably be an interesting one to follow. But a lot of them are on short-term contracts and stuff. They'll just get cleared off the books. So Forest would be the other one you'd be a bit concerned for, maybe. Stavros says, good morning, James. On Wildcard now, what's the 2 best options for the goalkeeper position that will carry until the end of the season? Ward might be dropped as per speculation. Yeah, I kind of covered it off. Ignore the Leno bit that I said if you're bench boosting in 29. If I was wildcarding now, Kepa would definitely be one. The other name to obviously consider that I should have said is David De Gea, actually, who of course clears 29, good fixtures 30-31, likely doubles 34-37. The only caveat with that would be it only really works for free hitters 32 if Manchester United and Chelsea is postponed in that game week. Obviously, if they play, it doesn't particularly matter. So, arguably, if you're prepared to spend the money, De Gea plus Kepa arguably would be the way to go. Which has completely not helped the person who asked the question originally, because I didn't mention David De Gea. Probably logged out and went, thanks, James. And then probably decided to get David De Gea anyway. Konstantinos says, James, is free hit 29 a bit overlooked? Lots of teams that we wouldn't want long-term have great doubles. Bournemouth, West Ham, Forest, Leicester, etc. Maybe it's worth going for a different 11 to gain rank. Yeah, you can play it that way, of course. But when you get there, is that really what you're picking? Like when you land there, are you really going, right, I'm going to go Solanke, Billing, Ben Rama, Ings, Zuma, Johnson, Gibbs White, Navas, Castagna, Maddison, Iheanacho? Is that what you're really going to look at? Because the others have as well, right? Villa's not terrible. Chelsea's not terrible. Brighton's not terrible, right? There are others as well. It's very valid to look at doing it that way. I would just say when you get there, like how heavy do you really go on that? Truthfully. Can they act as differentials for that week? Yeah, sure. Forest, by the way, have an away game in 29, so I'm not sure how great that double truly is. But actually, no. Arguably, it is the best double. Wolves at home, Leeds away. I wouldn't get any of their defensive players, though. Ryder Ericsson says, hi, James. -4 for Chilwell in for Henry. Henry is very attacking, and the fixture isn't too bad this week. But Chilwell should get more points over the next 2 games, which is just take the -4 now. No. Probably do it as a free in 29, right? Unless it gets the move out the way and sets you up for something different. Do I think Chilwell outscores Henry this week? Yeah, but I think that's one. Unlike with the Zinchenko one, we're saying, look, Strong doubt he doesn't play. And Henry, yeah, it's a rough double 29, but as you already said, he's offensive. Could even get you an attacking return in one of them. They're decent defensively as well. Would it be a huge shock if they went to Brighton and got a 0-0? Not huge, I don't think. United are going to have obviously a backlog of fixtures, which is ongoing at the moment. Is it beyond reason that they get something at Old Trafford? Not necessarily. So I think from -4 for that one, less keen. If you were going to captain Chilwell, then yeah. Josh 14X says thoughts on Chilwell captain. Feels like a nice week to go different from the crowd. I don't hate that move at all. I find it very difficult to foresee that Ben Chilwell wouldn't start. I'd be shocked, to be honest. He's probably going to go in as my vice, to be honest. So I absolutely do not mind that move at all. The three players I was really considering was him, Saka and Watkins for myself. I think I've deemed him a better choice than Watkins, but not a better choice than Saka. That's my take. But yeah, if you fancy that, I think it's absolutely fine. Tom Knapp says, morning James, had planned Trent to Chilwell from -4 this week. But with Sam Martin mentioning Everson likely to start tomorrow, should I use the hit to move Ward instead for bench boost 29 or both from -8? Well, I'd only be looking to move Ward if your other goalkeeper had a blank. So, I mean, if you're sitting there Ward and Steele, for example, then arguably, yeah, I'd be considering it. That's a tough run, I think, for Ward owners if that information turns out to be correct, which Sam's good for info. Sam's not saying it for a wind-up. He either really thinks Everson will play or he might even know himself. Seems strange they've waited all this time to do it, though. But most would have done it earlier. Now, Everson did not impress when he played against Blackburn in the Cup from what I saw of the goals that night. I would still go Trent to Chilwell, I think. I'd do that one. Again, it's no game, so the game's there. So I think the Chilwell, yes, I'd do. The Ward, I'd only do now if you don't have another goal. If you have any other goalkeeper who's got a fixture, even if you had Bazunu, I wouldn't do the -4. If you've got nothing this week, yeah, I'd strongly consider it. Near Shakhtar says, morning James, on a free hit, Son or Maddison? Still Maddison for me. Yeah, that would be quite clear for me. Uros Milicevic says, good morning James, Havertz or Watkins for a Haaland replacement? Best of luck this game week. Well, it looks like the more template move is going to be Watkins. From some of the data I've seen, and I don't look at it as much as others will have done on other shows such as Black Box, for example, the stats I've seen would seem to favour Watkins as well. But I do like the Havertz pick. I mean, if I was free hitting this week, I'd probably go both, to tell you the truth. Actually, that's not true. I wouldn't, actually. If I was free hitting this week, it would be Havertz or Kane, I suppose. I wouldn't move Tony out on a free hit, and I wouldn't move Watkins out on a free hit. So I suppose the final place would be Havertz or Kane, probably, for me. If I decide not to captain Harry, which arguably I wouldn't based on what I've said, maybe I would go Havertz. I think both are good choices. I think the note that favours Watkins, I think, is game week 30, is the fact they've got Forest at home. Also, with Havertz, if it's a longer-term pick, consider that with them still being in the Champions League, rotation is more of a prospect. When we talk about Chelsea continuity, I think that it doesn't mean it doesn't refer to the attacking players, it does, but it refers far more to the defensive players. So could he get rotated for Wolves away in 30 or Brighton at home in 31? Yes, possibly. That said, with Watkins, there's every chance you'll want to move that on quite quickly from game week 30. So it may depend a little bit on what you'd want. I think at this moment in time, I would just go for Watkins, I think. But I think Havertz is a very, very reasonable alternative. I really do. He'd definitely be the Chelsea attacking player of choice. Ali Bisma says, another question, James. What's your opinion on Iheanacho's minutes down the line as you have him in your team? Any backup plans if he falls out of favour with Rodgers? I considered even selling now, actually, but it doesn't feel the right play because I think, even if he comes on as a sub, can he do something for me this week? Yeah, it would probably be for me because you know me, I'm a stickler for planning, and I keep saying that I think Newcastle Brighton will probably be in 31. I'd arguably go Isak. And obviously going into 29, I'll have more information. Going into 29, I'll know by that point if it's going to happen or not. And that may make Isak really appeal. So I think for me, if Iheanacho wasn't to start today, tomorrow, and Isak does well again against Forest, which he doesn't have to score, he just has to play well. And then the 31 fixtures added, yeah, I'd be very, very tempted to do that. That said, Iheanacho, if you had 2.5 hours in a double as part of a bench boost, and if he didn't start tomorrow, he'd definitely be part of the bench boost, I think. Is that still decent enough for him? You know, with Iheanacho, I probably was never thinking he'd start twice in 29 anyway. But, you know, let's say 100 to 120 minutes. Yeah, it's still reasonable, I think. So it's truly dependent on what happens tomorrow. I think probably for me to move him, I'd really have to have a gut feeling of being really concerned that he wouldn't start either in 29. That would be my take. And I'm also conscious with them as well. They've got Bournemouth at home in 30. It's another good fixture. So I've got to be sure, I think, if I sell him. So I'm going to give myself breathing space. Certainly wouldn't sell now. Definitely wouldn't buy now, by the way. Not a consideration for free hitters or buyers at this moment in time. But for an owner like me, I don't think I'll move at the moment. Marius Lupescu says, good morning, James. So does Heather. Thank you, guys. Sim says, good morning, James. Hope you're keeping well. I am. Thank you, mate. Hope you are too. Richard Marshall also says, good morning, thanks guys. Stan44 says, morning James. If we go into game week 29 with Tony available and still one card away from a ban, do you think taking the risk he doesn't get booked in the first game is a better choice than just having Haaland? Difficult one. I mean, again, like if we're referring it just to that game week, would I free hit Ivan Toney on 9 yellow cards? Absolutely no chance. No, there's better alternatives from that perspective. You know, again, all the players, Havertz, Watkins, Isak, you've got the likes of Johnson, Solanke come into the conversation and stuff, and obviously Haaland himself. So Tony would be less desirable in 29. If he escapes the booking tomorrow, do I move him on? Probably not. Probably not. And just take the chance he doesn't get booked against Brighton. And you know, just having him on the pitch, a penalty is almost certainly a goal and stuff. He's been one of the best forwards in the league this year, second highest English scorer. So unless he gets booked tomorrow, it's unlikely that I move him on. Although it would be very FPL for him to do well tomorrow, not get booked, then get injured making his England debut. Andrew Ross says, hi James, who wins the league? I worry City are hitting their stride and we won't have enough in these away games. Also, everyone liked the stream for fuck's sakes. Thank you, Angle. Yes, very true. It's about 15% who are watching live who've hit the like button. Doesn't cost anything, guys. Be very, very appreciated if you could smash that like. You're obviously an Arsenal fan, I'm guessing from what you're saying. Have City truly hit their stride? Or did they just demolish a poor Red Bull Leipzig team? Well, was poor the other night with Haaland scoring a combined 5 goals from a total distance of about 25 yards. Have they hit stride? I'm not sure they have. You watched them at Palace last weekend. I still think Arsenal will win it. I maintain that. Arsenal win Sunday. They got 8 points clear. 8 points clear. Then it's Leeds at home. Same day City play Liverpool. Liverpool for the big games, strong mentality, good results. Gets to 10 points. It's nearly it, isn't it? Arsenal go 8 clear tomorrow. Oh, on Sunday even. So it's still Arsenal for me. I think the key game might be Arsenal's trip to Liverpool rather than actually the trip to City. Because I think if Arsenal do well at Anfield, if they win at Anfield, I'm almost certain they'll be in a position where they can lose at City and still be top. And I think if you get that far, then you'd fancy them. They've also, last night, yeah, it's a little bit of a blow. Well, it's obviously a blow that Arsenal went out last night. But in terms of winning the title, once the dust has settled, it's probably a positive, isn't it? So, yes, I still think Arsenal will win the league. I've been saying that for the best part of probably 4 or 5 months now. I think they've been the best team in this league by a distance this year. As much as it pains me, I'd have to say that they deserve to win it. And I to be honest with you, I don't think City win every game left, to be honest. So I still think Arsenal. Thomas Mould says, morning James, bring in Watkins or gamble on Jesus? No, I wouldn't gamble on Jesus at this stage, personally. Does he start on Sunday? There's every chance. Yes, there's every chance. But they're obviously going to be cautious with him. It could easily be a 55-minute job. Not that he can't return in that sort of period, but no, I would go Watkins, mate. JP says, I have 3 Brighton, 1 defensive, 2 midfielders, and Salah and Rashford. Already have Chilwell and Watkins. No idea what to do. 9 playing at the moment. Looking to sell Salah, but no idea who to. Which comes back to the problem that I've mentioned a number of times on this stream, is that the midfield options this week are not great. I would not buy Heung-min Son. Even as a 1 week in and out, I wouldn't do it. Free hit, yeah, I'd consider it. But if you get stuck and you get left with Son, unfortunately his performances haven't merited it. I should also say on Son as well, there was some speculation yesterday that he didn't train on Wednesday. There was a video that Tottenham posted and he wasn't in it. There was no information on him yesterday in Conte's press conference. Whether there'll be any today, I doubt. So again, don't just go completely shit on the bench if you decide to free hit with someone like that. I realise me saying that alone is going to put people off, but I'd still probably be keen to gamble it, because I think you could still have like an Almiron or a Buendia would be affordable as a backup on the bench, just for free hitters. So certainly wouldn't buy Heung-min Son. Yeah, not great options. Again, depends on your strategy moving forward. Are you bench boosting 29, for example? I guess probably the doubts you've got would suggest maybe that you are. I would probably sell one of the Brighton players rather than Salah at this minute, I think. I'd look at someone at a similar value, the likes of Almiron and Buendia, those we've mentioned a couple of times, and I'd go for it and know that if you have to leave it, then it's still okay for next week. J23 says, morning, what do you think chances of Emerson starting? Unlikely. And I presume you mean Emerson Royal, not that West Ham are playing this weekend, so it has to be. Unlikely. I think Porro did all right last week. I think it's probably the sort of fixture that's another good one for him to play, to be totally honest. So I think Porro plays. Wouldn't be hugely shocked if Emerson played left wing back, as ridiculous that sounds. That feels just as likely as him playing at right wing back actually tomorrow. So 20%, probably about that. Manon says, hi James, what's your goal for overall this season and where are you ranked now? Where am I ranked now? About 550k, something like that, I think. Goal, just to do as well as I can, to be totally honest. I think top 100k is probably going to be pretty difficult from here. I guess that would be the target. Probably more about trying to catch Sudge, which, for those who watched the podcast on Monday, went, oh my God, Sudge has demolished James again. The Brentford and Brighton clean sheets meant I significantly had a big overturn against him by the end of the week. I think he finished on, I think 78 net. I think in the end I finished on 90 net, which I realised loads have had better scores than me this week, which a lot answered by the fact I obviously gambled against Harry Kane, particularly when I wildcarded. So yeah, I'm not in a terrible position. I'm not doing great. I'm not doing terrible. I guess top 100k, but I'd never really. My goal at the start is to finish first, and once I've realised that I can't do that, which is normally by halfway through game week 1, then he just doesn't really matter in quite the same way to me. So I guess I guess anyone in my position right now would probably be trying to target top 100k. Might be a bit ambitious. If you said to me now top 200k, I'd settle for that, to be honest. Richard Marshall says, James, thoughts on Maddison captain? No, a little bit ambitious. Brentford, very tough team to beat as well. So be a no from me, mate. He won't be in my top 10 on the deadline stream. Bloomer Caldera says, we do not like your Aston Villa correspondent as he was unclear about his Villa player choices and made fun of you. Remove him and bring someone new, please. Bloomer, I'm far more likely to remove you from this chat, mate. People have learnt in the past, you diss my correspondence, I'll come back with fire, mate. I'm going to give myself a couple of seconds before I decide whether to remove you or not. Lee is brilliant. He's full of insight and he's not just going to bullshit you, mate. He's giving honest answers as a fan, which is what it's all about, right? It's fan representation. And what you wanted was oh my God, Cash is definitely the best defensive choice. What if he's wrong? He's right to be hesitant, right? He could sit there like we all could have said, well, Ollie Watkins will play. Yeah, sure. He even mentioned the prospect of perhaps even Esri Konsa playing right back. I don't agree with it. What are you going to say to him if that does happen? So, no, mate. Bloom, I'll let you stay for now. Dave M says, hi, James. Thoughts on United assets for double game week 29 with Casemiro suspension? Thanks. Off-putting. Very much so. Because I was pretty set in my plan for 29 to get Shaw and Fernandes. That's going to need some think. I do intend to watch the game against Fulham on Sunday, but I am also conscious that I don't think, and I've said this during the course of the week, even if it is McTominay and Fred in midfield and Fernandes still plays at 10, what does that mean for the double? Not necessarily the same. Not necessarily the same at all. So, yeah, I'm conscious of it. And it might be that I'd still go with those moves, Fernandes and Shaw, for example. But, yeah, I think we need information. They certainly wouldn't, and to be honest, it's worth saying anyway, not early transfers, internationals and stuff going on, guys. Like, please don't make early transfers before 29. Let them price rises go, honestly, if you can. Let them go. The information, particularly for bench boosters, gotta wait and get all the information. It's a Saturday deadline, excuse me, for game week 29. Like, wait at least on the information and make your decision Friday night, which is 2 weeks today, right? Log out for a while. Nikki Kassam says, happy weekend, gangster. I'm on wildcard. I really want to punt Isak, but I've currently got Kane, Watkins, Tony. I guess I have to punt against Ivan. You're on wildcard. Yeah, if I was on wildcard, I wouldn't go Tony. If I was on wildcard, I think I would probably go Watkins, Havertz, Isak, actually. To be honest. J23 says, also, are you betting on the horses today? No, long time since I had a bet on a horse. Literally zero interest. I couldn't even tell you one horse running today at Cheltenham. Not a clue. I'm aware it's going on. Imaginer77 says, morning, James. UCL draw game you'd like to see. Napoli versus Benfica. That's the hipster one, isn't it? Surely. Yeah. Napoli, Benfica. Maybe a Milan derby. Take us back to prime Shevchenko era and stuff like that, maybe. But yeah, Napoli, Benfica, I think if they draw each other, I will make the time to watch that tie. I would very much hope it wasn't the same night as, say, Man City against Bayern Munich or Man City Real Madrid, because that would be a problem. Not that you can't record these games and watch them back. I probably would, but I'd like to watch them. Napoli, Benfica, yeah. I'd like to watch that live. JP says, thoughts on Capsy struggling between Tony and versus depleted Leicester defender or inconsistent Spurs. Just do what I'm doing, mate. Go Saka. Tim Felkin says, good morning, pal. Rashford to Almiron this week. I have 2 free transfers. Crazy question. I'm also thinking I might keep him for next week's double and take out Saka to bring Rashford back. I have 2 Brighton and Hove Albion, so sounds perfectly reasonable plan, to be totally honest. And we're going to finish on this one from Jansky. He says, hey, James, would like your view on either McAllister or Rashford out for Martinelli or even Trossard? Which one would you do? Thanks. I wouldn't buy a Martinelli, unfortunately, now. If I was going to punt that, it'd be Trossard. In terms of selling one, all I could say from that is that I think for game week 29, Marcus Rashford, I think as it stands, will probably be the most, well, he'll almost definitely be the most captain player, but I think it'd be the most popular in terms of selections anyway. And I would rather make sure that he was still sitting there. I guess you've probably got more value built up in Rashford as well, so I'd rather you sold McAllister from the 2 of them, and then if you want to go back to that, then you absolutely can. Right, we'll leave it there, guys. Thanks very much. For the patrons, we've still got the differential show for you today. Should be with you about 1:30ish, 2 o'clock, I believe. For the advanced tier patrons, Team News stream 4:30 p.m. today. And for everybody else on the Planet FPL YouTube channel, the deadline stream will be live for you at 5:30 p.m. tonight, ahead of what, remember, is a 6:30 p.m. UK deadline for blank game week 28. If you'd like to support the show, www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. Other than that, Just want to wish everybody a great weekend, and for the benefit of those on the audio, cue music please, Mansholt.